Welcome back, everyone. This time to the VCE Music Performance Online Oral Training Rhythmic Transcription / Dictation Part 2 presentation with Yolette Stewart. This PowerPoint presentation and the contents herein have been created by me, Yolette Stewart. Some prior musical knowledge is assumed when working with these transcriptions. Thank you for your patience with a couple of the glitches in these presentations. Transitions are not appearing to work very well for movie creation at the moment, and there is a bit of a timing issue when it comes to the embedded audio. I am working on these issues. So if we treat this presentation and all of the ones like it in the light in which they're meant to be seen, which is as an educational support for your learning this year during difficult circumstances, then the glitches hopefully are not so important. By the time I got up to take 30 on the first rhythmic presentation I prepared, enduring numerous interruptions from my children, pets and other like issues, I just had to end where I was at and move forwards. I will aim to improve the technical side of things as much as possible in each new PowerPoint presentation I release. So let us get moving forwards. Here we see that wonderful VCAA music language chart. We saw this one at the end of the first presentation I prepared. We ended, in fact, with compound time signature rhythms to transcribe in that presentation. Here we are again dealing with compound time signatures or dotted crotchet beat time signatures, again with a vengeance. We will, in fact, begin with a 6/8 time signature, move on to 3/8 and 9/8 time signatures, and then at the end of this presentation return to a simple time signature again. In the midst of these transcriptions, I will also have some comparisons and discussions on the rhythmic groupings in compound time signatures. For the first transcription in this presentation, you will need to allow for 4 bars of 6/8. As per the first presentation I did, please get out your sharpened pencils, manuscript paper and an eraser. Your hand-to-paper skills are important and you need to know how to notate correctly. So I do have a slide here in which we're going to talk about that briefly. The notes on this page, for example, all have their stems going up on the right-hand side. So let me pull up my laser pointer here. See how all the stems are going up on the right-hand side here. We don't have any examples on this page of notes with stems down. Probably it's a good idea if the VCAA actually did that. But these samples here in this box, this is correct notational practice, right? Then, of course, you have to be able to develop the skill in terms of putting it onto a piece of manuscript, right? That's another skill as opposed to just seeing it naked in the white light here. So when you have a stem going downwards, the stem must go down on the left-hand side. Notes should look like T's and D's, and no lollipop syndromes, please. I'll discuss that. Here we are. This is an old sample I knocked up for some students previously, and I did it manually so we could see some of the manual problems that arise when we have to notate. So here we have when we have a note that sits below the middle line, we're talking about a stave now. This is a clef stave, a treble clef or a bass clef stave, and the rules of notation are as follows. If you have a note that sits on the middle line, the stem may go up on the right-hand side. That is a tick, right? If you have a note on the middle line, the stem may also go down on the left-hand side. That is a tick, right? The middle line is the measuring guideline here, so to speak. Once you start to go above the middle line, the stems attached to note heads must always go down on the left-hand side. If you have note heads below the middle line, they must go up on the right-hand side. So notes, if I flick over here, notes should always look like P's and D's, not Q's or B's. All right, have a good look at this sheet in your own time. This sample is correct. The notes are rising gently. So the stems are placed in such a way that they are rising gently as well, and the beam is at an angle. Right. Some students do a beam that is parallel to the stave, and that's not as effective to look at. For some reason, it's not as easy for musicians to read. You have to consider how a musician might read your score. Right. This is clearly incorrect. It's back to front. An examiner looking at this would go, oh, they've got the pitch right, or they've got the rhythm right, but oh, the notational skills aren't correct, I can't give full marks. So you might actually have a correct answer, but you haven't notated it correctly, you're going to lose some marks. Right? Similar thing, you've got one note right here, but the second one not. This is just a no-no. If you're seeing this configuration, that's just not right. Now, in a case where you've got several notes across the middle line, you get to make a choice as to whether or not the stems go up on the right-hand side or down on the left-hand side. In a case where you've got 2 out of the 3 notes are above the middle line, this second one would make more sense than that one, but I have seen both configurations before. This sample here, both of these are written correctly in terms of the stems, but the beam is not slanted in the same direction as the notes, and that makes it harder for musicians to read. It's not as good. You need to slant the beams. Right, this is wrong. Okay, it's just not effective. Unless we've got multiple parts on a stave, we don't usually write with stems going down like this, all right? That's more advanced type of notation. So this one is correct. Right, if you have all these notes sitting below the middle line, the common sense approach would be to put all the stems up on the right-hand side. Right. In this case, you can see that 2 notes sit below the middle line and 2 above the middle line, so you could divvy it up. You could technically go either way. This one, because it sits across the stave and it's all on the notes that sit in the spaces, to me that's a better solution there. Right? And this is in fact what I mean by lollipop syndrome. This just drives me crazy. It's like students sit on the fence. They go, oh, I can't remember, was the stem supposed to go down on the left-hand side or up on the right-hand side, or was it the other way around? And so they seem to put lollipops in there. Please try to avoid that. Okay, you might have been caught a bit by surprise there. I had warned you on a previous slide that you were going to have an example. So this example was 6/8 time signature. Please feel free to rewind the YouTube clip as many times as you need to get a full and complete answer. You are restricted to 6 or so playings in your final end of year exam, of course, but here you've got a luxury. You can rewind this clip and try to get as complete an answer as possible. Right, let's go to the next slide and see what the answer is. Again, this is your count-in bar. That's how I've got this all set up, and this is your actual answer here. Right, these are straightforward configurations off that 6/8 list. Right, as per the first presentation I prepared, please ensure you scan your answer thoroughly, giving yourself a mark out of 4 for each bar. How did you go? Was this hard for you? Let us break a few things down here. Sorry, just trying to deal with an interruption from the file here. All right, how did you go? I'm going to divert on a few pages here now to just talk through divisions in the compound time signatures and relate them back to the simple time signatures a little bit for you, and with the hope that there's some sort of light at the end of the tunnel in terms of understanding this. Again, I still encourage you and push you to do your own learning in relation to clarifying the difference between simple time signatures and compound time signatures. The best learning that we do, friends, is when we get out, we have a quest ourselves, we really have a burning desire to know the answer, we go looking for that answer, and we find the answer and we process it at some level within ourselves. That is the best type of learning. You've got to learn to do a lot more of that. This is a very spoon-fed type of presentation here. It's really backup support, I guess, for our unusual circumstances with this global pandemic we're dealing with at the moment. So treat it as such, and it's more exercise practice. I guess I would see these presentations as support for students as well as teachers. So see it in that light. but I encourage you to go forth and pursue things in their own light so you understand and absorb. That journey is a very fascinating one, and it makes your learning much richer and deeper, and you retain what you learn for much longer. All right, here is a page where we've got an explanation and comparison of simple triple, compound duple, and compound triple. Here are some examples. Here is 3/8, here is 6/8, here is 9/8. In 3/8, we have one dotted crotchet beat per bar, right? We do not call 3/8 a compound time signature. We call it a simple triple, right? And I will group that accordingly on the next slide. You'll see that on the next slide as well. So in simple triple, sorry that it looks like 38 and 34 here, but simple triple is referring to 3/8 and 3/4, which in respect to 3/8 time signature, you would have 3 quaver beats per bar. In respect to 3/4 time signature, you would have 3 crotchet beats per bar, and that will be sampled on the next slide. But you can see each bar has one dotted crotchet, and once that dotted crotchet is represented as quavers, it expands into 3 quavers per dotted crotchet beat. Right? That's an example of what music would look like in 3/8. You're using all the same configurations as what you would use in 6/8 and 9/8. It's just that it's one dotted crotchet beat per bar. Here, compound duple, we have 2 dotted crotchet beats per bar. This is what the bar looks like when you've just got the 2 dotted crotchet beats on their own and then expanded into 2 groups of 3 quavers. So you would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just with a little emphasis on pulse 1 and pulse 4 of that bar. Okay, and here, so compound duple is called compound duple by virtue of the fact that there are 2 dotted crotchet beats in the bar. And similar precept here, we have 3 dotted crotchet beats in the bar for compound triple, which is also known as 9/8. All right, so 9/8 is compound triple, 6/8 is compound duple, 3/8 is actually a form of simple triple. All right, again, I encourage you to go and do your own reading and research on this matter as to why this is the case. Let's move on to the next slide. Now I've grouped them again. I didn't have this in the first presentation because I was rather anxious to get onto the actual transcriptions themselves. So here we have simple duple, simple triple, simple quadruple examples. Simple duple, you have 2 crotchet beats per bar, each beat divisible by 2 quavers. Okay, that's what that looks like. Divided, you've got your crotchet beats in the first bar and then represented with quavers. Most of us are familiar with this kind of setup, right? Similar thing here, simple triple, we've got 3 crotchet beats per bar, each beat divisible by the 2 quavers. I'm now referring back to what I was discussing on the previous slide. Here's simple triple again. It's the same example. It's 1 dotted crotchet beat per bar, each dotted crotchet beat divisible by 3. Alternately, we can say 3 quaver pulses or beats per bar. The difference really between a 3/8 time signature and a 3/4 time signature would have something to do with the style, the genre in which we might be performing, and also the tempo we might perform a piece in. I strongly recommend that you perhaps locate some animated scores on YouTube that are Haydn or Mozart string quartets, and you go to the movements that are in 3/4 or 3/8 and have a listen to the difference between pieces performed in 3/4 and 3/8. They're both still simple triple. That doesn't change one thing. But in terms of performing in 3/4 versus 3/8, there's a slight difference with tempo and a few other issues there. And of course 4/4 is simple quadruple. That's my stock supply here in these transcription presentations at the moment when we're dealing with simple time signatures. I like working with simple quadruple. I tend to think that if you can get things done in simple quadruple, you can certainly get it done in simple duple. This is 4 crotchet beats per bar, each beat divisible by the 2. Now I've got a feeling the next page we're on to another example. So, make sure you have your manuscript ready to go. Your 4 bars ready to go. I think it's another 6/8 example. Oh no, hang on, bear with me. We are about to enter further illustrations of compound groupings. Yes, sorry, I did forget that. Compound time signatures groupings. Let me say that again. Compound time signature groupings part 1. Here we have 1 beat out of a 6/8 bar. So that's only half a 6/8 bar, and I'm just showing you how that 1 beat is equated or reduced or broken down into the 3 pulses, right? The 3 pulses there can again be represented as 6 quaver pulses. I have explained this in the first presentation. So each of those quaver pulses can be represented with 2 semi-quaver pulses. I hope I've explained that all correctly. I've used the correct terminology. I'll say that again. Each quaver pulse can be represented with 2 semi-quavers. So that's why 3, this is just straightforward musical maths, 3 quavers will equate to 6 semi-quavers, grouped as a 3 here and a 6 here. Don't forget your second being there, 2 semi-quavers per quaver pulse, and therefore that original figure, the dotted crotchet, equates to the 6 semi-quavers. Okay. Compound time signature groupings part 2. Here's a little bit of a comparison, and that this is all I'm doing. It's just a very simple comparison. If I put one configuration over the top of another one, you can see here you've got 2 semi-quavers that can equate to 1 quaver, another 2 to another quaver, and then those 2 equate to those 2. Right, if you compare these 2 configurations, you will see that in the first one, the semi-quavers appear on the 3rd quaver pulse or beat, instead of 4 semi-quavers across beat 1 and beat 2 here. We have only 2 semi-quavers on that 3rd pulse. Study the next few configurations as they are simply rearrangements of this concept. All I'm trying to get you to do here is to match up where the semi-quavers would match as compared to the 6 grouping, right? I'm trying to get you to think, break this down visually and also orally. So the visual examination, I'm trying to get you to relate that to your oral experience as well. Here's another grouping. See how the semi-quavers appear on that 2nd pulse now? And in this one, they appear on the 1st one. You compare the 2, okay? You'll see where they all fit in there. What about the dots? Here we have a dot. This configuration would be the same as this one. You would play the first of the 6 semi-quavers, but tie it to the 2nd and the 3rd. Okay? Can you see how the first of the 6 semi-quavers is tied to the 2nd and 3rd semi-quavers, thereby making both configurations the same orally? Theoretically, notationally, they look a little different, but to the ear they're the same. Can you see how the first quaver in the 2nd half of this musical equation, so the first quaver, the 2nd half of this musical equation, this is this one, is tied to the first of the middle group of semi-quavers, okay? The 2 configurations equal one another, right? It's sometimes when I've explained this to students in the past, I've only had to write it on the board and they look at it and the penny drops. They go, oh, now I get what's going on with the dot. I didn't understand what the value of the dot was. We know, we can sit here and explain to you that when you add that dot in, a dot after a quaver technically equals the 3 semi-quavers. So that's what that equals, right? But breaking it down like this and showing how the ties are all linked into one another, that should help you understand what those rhythms mean in context of performance. Again, as I said in the first presentation, the best way to deal with this is to get out your books and practice. Copy down all of these rhythms, write their rhythm names in underneath, go and research rhythm names in compound time signatures. See if you can find some interesting ideas and concepts there, write them down and practice them. The kinesthetic playing, that tactility that you develop when you clap and play, helps teach you orally, and it also helps make your learning deeper, richer, more long-term. Okay, I think we're up to an oral example here. I think I've been getting a bit ahead of myself. So just get prepared. You might have an oral example here. It is in 6/8. You will get that counting bar again with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm hoping some of these explanations have just cast a few little insights upon what we're trying to achieve here. Okay, I hope that was clear for you. I'm about to move to the next slide for the answer. So please make sure you have had a few rewinds here and you have tried to notate or transcribe this rhythm. Let's see what the answer is. Study it carefully. Take the time to study it. I would practice clapping it as well before you move on to the next transcription. How did you go in terms of a mark? Did you create a mark out of 16 for yourself here? What did you get? Remember what I said. Each one of these compound time signature transcriptions that you do, you want to be getting higher and higher with the marks. So if you're failing them at the start, if you're getting 2 or 3 out of 16, you eventually want to be sitting somewhere about 8 out of 16, and in time, as you do more of these, heading up to the 12, 13, 14 out of 16 marks. Okay, again, I've said this elsewhere. This question is often worth quite a few points on the paper. It is worth getting your rhythmic transcription sorted, guys. All right, next example. Get ready for the next one. Okay, I hope that was loud and clear for you. I'm about to move on to the next slide for the answer. Take your time, look at the answer carefully. You will need to prepare yourself now for a 9/8 rhythmic transcription. So that means you need to write out 4 bars for 9/8, space them out. Right, make sure you leave a lot of space. It's a bit different visually assigning space in the compound time signatures because you tend to require more space per dotted crotchet beat. So just bear that in mind. You need to make sure everything's clearly labelled. If you've got sections where you've got the double beams here, please make sure you've got them written in. Right, so we're going to move to the next example. Okay, a slightly longer, more drawn out example there. I hope that was clear enough for you. Please keep rewinding to get your full complete answer. Even if some parts are incorrect, try to get as much in as you possibly can. Right, next slide for the answer. Doesn't that look complicated? We're over 2 lines now. Now, look what I sprung on you. Look what I sprung on you, a duplet. Right? In a compound time signature, a duplet is performed evenly across the beat. It feels weird, but we call it a duplet. There is another way of writing this. We don't really need to go into this now for the purposes of a VCAA exam. I suppose without the 2 on the top, you could write 2 dotted quavers there. I have seen that configuration before. It's usually in piano music by Michael Nyman, actually. So here's your counting bar, and this from here to the end, that was your answer. Did you get the duplet? Did you identify that correctly? Right. That's a nice easy bar there, isn't it? These two are mirror versions of each other. That's straightforward. That should have been easy to pick up. That wasn't, in my view, that's not a particularly hard excerpt. It's just with the constant tapping, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So that's why you need to do a lot of these so your ear learns to divide the beats up and go, aha, I know what that configuration was. I can sketch it in. Right? More practice prevents panic in the exam. Okay. I know we're heading into a 3/8 sample soon, and then ending with, I think, a 4/4 sample. So just prepare yourself for the next example here, please. Okay, let's see what the answer was. Again, certainly in my view, not a very hard example at all. That's your counting bar, and this is your answer. It's just drawing the 3/8. It is a simple time signature, right? Simple triple time signature, but it draws on the same configuration, same rhythmic configurations as 6/8 and 9/8 and even 12/8, which we haven't yet looked at. Okay, that to me wasn't hard. You can see that a 4-bar sample of 3/8 is going to be shorter in duration than a 4-bar sample in 9/8. You can work the maths out on that one, can't you? All right, now we're going to go back to a simple quadruple rhythmic transcription again. Good work. So make sure you are rewinding this clip to get your in-depth, detailed answer down. How do you feel moving back from the compound time signatures back into the simple time signatures? How do you feel? Confident? Not so confident? How would you rate yourself? Just take a moment to think about this. Where's your confidence factor? Is your confidence and skill improving with these presentations? Rate it. What would you give yourself out of 10? Have you improved? Are you feeling a little bit more confident? Right? So if at the very start of presentation 1 you thought, oh, I'm terrible at rhythmic transcription, I need to do a lot more practice, I would rate myself as 2 out of 10. If that's what you would have rated yourself there, have you come up to a 6 or a 7 by now? Have a think about that. Are you building up some skill here? Right, here's the answer. Of course, I've thrown in triplets, all sorts of wonderful, delectable figures here. Right, check your answer carefully. Give yourself a mark out of 16, please. You should be getting very familiar with this process by now. Okay, that does in fact end this presentation. Thank you for bearing with me. My children have done their best to be quiet in the background, but I'm sure you've heard a few little noises here and there. So thank you for your patience. Well done, everybody.